Grasp of Moonlight Grove. Isolde loved the places the sun forgot. At 18, her beauty was a sharp contrast to the crumbling gray of her village, but her heart beat for the shadows. She stood before the rusted iron gates of Moonlight Grove, where the fog didn't just sit, it breathed. The village elders warned her that the dead there didn't sleep. They waited for a reflection of the life they had lost. The gate groaned as Isolde pushed it open. Inside, the world went silent. No birds chirped, and the wind felt like a cold finger tracing her spine. The headstones were tilted at impossible angles, like rotting teeth in the jaw of the earth. She walked deeper, her boots crunching on dead leaves that sounded like brittle bone. She felt as though 1,000 eyes were watching from the cracks in the stone. In the center of the grove stood a mausoleum of white marble, untouched by moss or decay. It glowed with a sickly, pearlescent light that seemed to pulse. Isolde felt a magnetic pull toward the structure, her own reflection shimmering in the unnaturally polished stone. As she approached, the air grew heavy with the scent of lilies and wet copper. "Beauty is such a fleeting currency, isn't it?" a voice rasped. Isolde spun around to find a man leaning against a weeping willow. He was gaunt, his skin the color of old parchment, dressed in a tattered frock coat. This was Ossian, the keeper of Moonlight. His eyes weren't eyes at all, but two pits of swirling gray smoke that seemed to drink the light. Ossian stepped forward, holding a hand mirror framed in black and silver. "The others here were beautiful once," he whispered, his voice like dry leaves skittering on a pavement. "But time is a thief. I offer a way to keep your bloom forever. Look into the silver and see the truth of what you are." Isolde felt a hypnotic pull, her fingers reaching for the cold metal. As Isolde peered into the mirror, the reflection wasn't hers. It was a skeletal face with hollow eyes, mimicking her every movement. She tried to drop the mirror, but it was stuck to her palm. Around her, the ground began to heave and buckle. Pale, translucent hands began to claw their way out of the dirt, reaching for the warmth of her living skin. The spirits rising from the graves were not peaceful. They were husks of envy, their mouths stretched in silent, jagged screams. They swarmed around Isolde, their touch like needles of ice piercing her skin. "Give us your breath," they seemed to hiss through the static of the wind. "Give us the color in your cheeks." Isolde stumbled back, her heart drumming a frantic rhythm. Ossian watched the chaos with a terrifying, toothy grin. He didn't move to help. He simply grew taller, his shadow expanding until it blotted out the moon and the stars. "The cemetery is a garden, Isolde," he cackled, his voice booming through the grove. "And every garden needs a centerpiece. You shouldn't have come seeking secrets in a place where the only secret is the end." Isolde tried to scream, but her voice was turning into dust. She looked down and saw her hands turning into the same white marble as the mausoleum. The cold was spreading, turning her blood to lead and her skin to stone. Ossian placed a heavy, freezing hand on her shoulder, his smoke eyes glowing with triumph. "Immortal," he whispered. "Exactly as you wished." The next morning, the fog lifted to reveal a new statue in the center of Moonlight Grove. It was a girl of breathtaking beauty, her hands frozen in a gesture of eternal plea. Travelers would often stop at the gate to marvel at the craftsmanship, noting how the stone felt strangely warm. They never noticed the single, real tear that shimmered on her marble cheek, never to fall. The girl who heard the grapes whisper. In the valley of Blackwood Row, the vines didn't just grow, they crept. Lily had lived among them her entire life, but she never felt alone. While others heard the rustle of leaves in the wind, Lily heard the voices. They weren't the sweet songs of nature. They were dry, rhythmic, and old, like the sound of skin stretching over bone. "Watch," the grapes would hiss as she passed. "Watch and wait, little seed." Her father, Silas, didn't hear the voices. He only heard the silence of a bank account running dry. One evening he sat Lily down by the flickering hearth. "The harvest is failing, Lily," he whispered, his voice cracking like a dried leaf. The soil has gone bitter. If we don't produce the grand reserve this year, the developers will take the land. We'll have to leave. That night, Lily walked into the heart of the vineyard. The air felt thick, smelling of fermentation and damp earth. The whispers were no longer a murmur, they were a roar. Thousands of tiny, dark voices erupted from the clusters of fruit hanging like heavy organs from the trellises. The land does not leave us, they chanted in a dissonant choir. The land stays. The debt is unpaid. We are thirsty, little seed. We are so very thirsty. Silas spent the following day pacing the rows, staring at the shriveled gray fruit. He touched a vine, and it pricked him, drawing a single bead of dark blood. He didn't notice the way the vine seemed to shudder and drink the red drop instantly. He only saw ruin. He looked at the for sale sign leaning against the gate and felt the weight of generations of failure pressing down on his shoulders. Lily found the oldest part of the vineyard, a place where the vines were as thick as tree trunks and the grapes were the color of a fresh bruise. The mother vine sat in a hollow where no birds sang. It didn't whisper, it vibrated. A sacrifice for the soil. The voice resonated inside Lily's skull. A life for the land. Give us what is yours, and the harvest will be eternal. The bank will have no power here. Lily ran back to the house to find Silas. She tried to tell him about the mother vine, about the bargain the earth wanted to strike. But Silas was lost in his own head, clutching an old photograph of the farm in its prime. There has to be a way, he moaned. Lily took his hand, her grip cold. The grapes said they can help, Papa. They just need to be fed. They want us to stay as much as you do. Panic and devotion are a dangerous vintage. Lily returned to the mother vine alone as the sun began to set, staining the sky the color of a pomegranate. She knelt in the dirt, the sharp stones cutting into her knees. I am the daughter of this soil, she whispered into the roots. The ground beneath her began to heave and pulse like a giant lung. The vines overhead began to lower themselves, their tendrils unfurling like silk ribbons. Silas woke the next morning to a sound he hadn't heard in years, the sound of birds. He rushed outside, expecting to see the developers' trucks. Instead, he saw a miracle. The vineyard was no longer gray and dying. It was a riot of lush, vibrant green and deep, heavy purple. The grapes were enormous, glowing with a strange internal light. But when he called for Lily, the only answer was the rustle of leaves. Silas wandered into the rows, searching for his daughter. He reached the center of the vineyard, where the mother vine stood. It was more magnificent than he had ever seen, its fruit dripping with a juice so dark it looked like ink. He noticed a piece of Lily's ribbon caught in the bark, but as he reached for it, the grapes began to hum. It was a low, vibrating sound that made his teeth ache. He felt a strange urge to taste the fruit. He plucked a single grape and bit into it. The flavor was overwhelming, sweet, metallic, and ancient. As the juice ran down his chin, he heard a voice. It wasn't the dry hiss of the wind anymore. It was Lily's voice, clear and soft, coming from the very cluster he held in his hand. Don't worry, Papa, the grapes whispered in unison. The farm is saved. We'll never have to leave. We're part of the roots now.